Are you interested in effortlessly growing your Bitcoin portfolio? I sure am. The Bitcoin credit card by Gemini earns you Bitcoin back on every purchase. Use it like any credit card. Buy lunch, gas, or your weekly groceries, and you'll earn up to 4% back instantly in Bitcoin or one of over 50 other cryptos straight to your account. All that with no annual fee, and right now you can grab a $200 Bitcoin welcome bonus. It's the easiest way to start building your Bitcoin stack. Go to Gemini.com/card to learn more. Terms apply. See the link in the description for more information regarding rates and fees.
Let's say your small business has a problem, like maybe one of your doggy daycare customers had an accident. You might say something like,
"Doggone it!
Hi, Chihuahua!"
Holy schnauzers!
But if you need someone who can actually help, just say,
"Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there."
And get help filing a claim from your local State Farm agent. For your small business insurance needs, like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Breaking down every game, every day in Major League Baseball. This is the Baseball Betting Show. Here is your host, Greg Peterson.
Everyone from below, welcome to lovely Las Vegas for the Baseball Betting Show with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSIN family podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for you as we're going to have a two-parter today because, well, we did not have any games to recap on Monday. It was a very rare off day in baseball, but we are going to have a great chat in a few minutes with Ben WIlson. He does such great work here at VSIN. We're going to be discussing these wild card matchups. We're going to talk about how you might take a look at some futures with regards to wild card matchups, how this year can provide a little bit of value on the futures market, but maybe it's not as valuable as it has been in past years. Ways to be able to take a look at some of these series game to game, a team out there in the American League that might have a little bit of value, and whether or not the bye is going to be helping out the four teams that have them, the Phillies, the Brewers, the Blue Jays, and the Seattle Mariners, as we've seen in this new wild card format that, you know what, a lot of these teams have gotten the bye. They have not necessarily been benefiting from it the way that you'd expect, and we're going to have a lot of fun chatting with Ben about that. In the final segment, we've got 4 games on the betting board for this Tuesday. I'm going to get you guys picks and analysis on all 4 of them as we touch them all. If you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you, for this podcast, you have one of 2 ways to be able to fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letters CM. They mean does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. And while I did not get in any Twitter/X questions, everything is powered by Edge Boost. Edge Boost is making sure that bettors are able to have access to their funds whenever and wherever. With Edge Boost, 100% of gambling transactions do indeed get approved. And when you go to edgeboost.bet, put in that promo code of Greg, G-R-E-G. That gets you a $1 match on your first deposit up to $25. Now let's chat with one of our good friends in Ben WIlson. He does such great work here at VSIN. He does an amazing job with his play-by-play work as well, whether that be in college baseball, college basketball, indoor football, tennis, you name it, he does it. He's a man of so many talents, and he, much like myself, a man that is from the great state of Wisconsin. You're able to follow him on the old Twitter/X at his first and last name, Ben, and then you get an underscore after that, WIlson, his last name, and then an underscore and the number 1 all together. And Ben, always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you so much.
Hey, absolutely, Greg. Love being a part of October baseball handicapping, especially when a team near and dear to our hearts is at least involved. It's not been every year we've been able to say that, but I'm looking forward, first off, to these wild card matchups before Milwaukee gets involved in the divisional series. And I'll just say, as far as Milwaukee goes, man, are they going to be happy they get this week off? Especially the bullpen, they can certainly use some rest. Very good thing for them to get at this time, I would say.
And it is so interesting that you bring that up because when it comes to the new, shall we say, playoff format that we've seen, a lot of the teams that have gotten the bye have been very rusty. Now, the Dodgers were able to win the World Series last year, but first 2 years of this format, the teams that got the bye were absolutely destroyed. How do you take a look at these teams that have the bye? Obviously, the Phillies and the Brewers on the National League side of things, on the American League side of things, the Blue Jays and the Seattle Mariners, because I think that's just such an interesting dynamic of the rest versus rust sort of argument.
Right. I look at it more, not just from the perspective of, okay, does a team get a bye? It's more, how did that road to the bye, especially in the final couple weeks of the season, manifest? And were those teams still having to fight hard? I mean, for Milwaukee, they clearly took a lot of stock in the fact that, I mean, only one time in franchise history had they ever finished with the most wins in baseball. That clearly meant a ton to Pat Murphy and his team. Sure, in the final week of the season, and they only, they clinched the division with 6 games to go. So the final week, there were a lot of call-ups and a lot of guys getting pulled after early starts, but they still clearly cared. It wasn't like they just sat everybody and now we're going to be super rusty. And also in the lead up to that, relied on a lot of arms who threw tons and tons of innings that will be very beneficial from getting a few days off. So a team like Milwaukee, who was pushed, only finished a game above Philadelphia for the best record in baseball, really wanted the 1 seed, fought hard in that respect. I believe from that perspective alone, if we're talking rest versus rust, will be fine. And honestly, same goes to, as much as I'm not super high in general, and we've discussed this in the past on Toronto. I mean, them getting pushed as hard as they were by the Yankees in that division, having to play every day, feeling like a sense of October baseball in the final weeks of the year. Even though you get the bye, like I kind of feel the same way on Toronto. That's beneficial. I guess if there's a team, I mean, it's funny, Philadelphia here's the short shot in the NL, and this is only the second time in the last decade, Greg, where we've had the short shot for the entire World Series futures starting the postseason be 4-1 or longer. It's usually a team, like at this point, there's kind of a clear-cut, obvious favorite that's getting bet heavily in the 2.5 to 3-1 range. But it is pretty telling that a team like the Phillies, as good as they have been, still had a lot of warts. And I think they got ignored a little bit, those warts, because of how the Mets collapsed. And there was legitimately no challenger for them whatsoever in the NL East. But that would be the one team that might come out of left field for some folks. I think the vast majority of the betting public are just naturally going to gravitate toward Toronto and Milwaukee as obvious fades. But look, a Philly-Dodgers series would be fascinating price-wise. And it's one of those where I actually wouldn't be shocked if the Reds stun the Dodgers in the wild card. At the same token, if the Dodgers are able to get through, avoid stubbing their toe, there would be nothing at all surprising to me about a Dodger run where they get back to the World Series representing the NL, and they would welcome that matchup against Philadelphia.
And I am so glad that you mentioned that Reds versus Dodgers series, because I look at game 1, and right now the Dodgers are a -$2 favorite with Blake Snell versus Hunter Green. And if you like the Dodgers, that series price is like -240. It's something very, very big. If you like the Dodgers, the most obvious place where they could stub their toe in this series is game number 1. And if you really like the Dodgers, I would be looking at either playing that game to game, or I'd be looking to bet that after game number 1, because I think that there's a legitimate chance that Hunter Green goes out there, gives a good start. And I mean, as we know in baseball, anything can happen. The Dodgers lost the season series to the Pittsburgh Pirates this year, and I just can't justify laying that sort of a number in terms of the series price with the Dodgers. And I give the Reds a legitimate chance of winning game 1, though I think game 2, game 3 would be an uphill challenge for them.
No doubt. And you just wonder, over the course of 3 games, the amount of arms that the Reds have had to use and really been taxed heavily. And watching that series over the weekend, it was only the second time all season you had a reliever used 4 straight days. But that comes with the territory when you're fighting for a playoff spot. I agree as far as these series. If it's a best of 3, anything priced over $2 is just kind of automatically ridiculous. And I realize, I guess the only other time we've really seen the Dodgers in this sort of particular setting was the COVID postseason, which I don't know.
We also saw them in that 1-game wild card against the Cardinals where they needed a walk-off home run in that game too.
Right. Yeah, no doubt. And so from the perspective of these short sample sizes, I'm referring to that 2020 that was Dodgers Brewers when we had the 50-game season. And that to me, I don't really necessarily, factor in. But at the same time, it is hard to sit there and go, okay, best of 3 series. You're just going to count a team out simply because of the perception of their inferiority over the course of 162 games. And I'll also look at some of this, just very small sample size, obviously on the data, because it hasn't been that many years since we've moved to this best of 3 wildcard format. But the vast majority of these series have been very quick. We've had a lot of sweeps. And something about that just sort of tells me, Greg, just maybe from a pure numbers perspective, like odds are that's not likely to continue if we're just talking pure regression of the mean. Like 80% of these series are not going to continue to be sweeps in the wild card round. So I certainly expect it would make a lot of sense this year, particularly with the perception being of how wide open both AL and NL are, that you get a bunch of these wild card sets going 3, and especially in the Cincinnati Dodger series where you're getting the best price, that would certainly be the one I would look to take the splash on the dog. And then hopefully if you do that, you're able to get Cincinnati, say, up early, get an opportunity to play back on the Dodgers. That probably is the best series for that, since it is somewhat lopsided in the series price.
Yeah, but I do think that with regards to playing series prices, it's just so difficult in terms of wild card set, just because you only have 3 games. You just want to have as much setting for that. And how much are you going to be looking to play game to game with regards to this postseason rather than taking a look at futures? Because I know you're a little bit more of a futures guy. I'm a little bit more of a game to game guy. And I feel like just with my own perception, there are some years where maybe you want to be a bit more of a futures guy. There are some years where you want to be a little bit more game to game. But we have mentioned it with the fact that it just feels like everything has been as clear as mud this year. This feels like a little bit more of a year to take a look at things a bit more game to game, just because we don't know what's going to happen and the margins just feel that thin.
Especially when the futures plays make the most sense are years where you maybe disagree, or as not necessarily disagree, but as a bettor, you see an opportunity where the numbers are really skewed heavily towards a particular favorite or two in each league. And we as baseball bettors, we just generally know that the randomness, the variance, even when there appears to be a clear-cut favorite, doesn't always play out that way. And I think that's where, from the futures perspective, it gets really more enticing when you get these longer shot prices that you feel like are very much live. You contrast that to this year, and as I was just talking about, when your short shot is 4-1 or longer in Philadelphia, there just doesn't exist that same sort of value, for a deep sort of shot like that represents a team that you're getting at just a gigantic mismatch from where they ought to be. I feel like because of that, the pricing futures wise is actually pretty fair for the most part. I'd probably still say the Brewers are being undervalued just, purely based on their number, because the market hasn't totally believed in them all year at near 8-9-1. But having said that, outside of that being the case, I'd still, even with them and for the rest of these leagues, for both AL and NLB, looking at it game to game, because of partially of the fact of not having that, that really long shot kind of enticing number to bet. And also just the way, as you put it, the variance and the overall depth of really all teams existing in these leagues and the weaknesses that all of them also have at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so wild what we've been seeing across both leagues. And I know that we're in agreement with regards to the National League being a little bit murky, but I just look at the American League more than anything else, and that feels like the ultimate crapshoot, because you have a Seattle Mariners team that may have been on the doorstep of making the playoffs for so long, but this is just their second time since 2001 being in the playoffs. For the Blue Jays, they've come out of nowhere a little bit, but they've got a shaky bullpen. With the Yankees, they rely a lot on the deep ball, and we both know balls that fly out in June and July don't necessarily fly out in October. The Cleveland Guardians, I'm unsure of what we're going to be able to get out of that offense. The Detroit Tigers, they've got Tariq Skubal, but what do they have outside of them? It just feels like the American League, out of both of the leagues, like I feel like they're both very wide open, but I feel like you could just pick a name out of the hat out of the 6 teams in the American League, say they went to the World Series, and everyone would be like, oh, sounds good to me.
Right. No, and it's funny. I think of all those, it's ironically somewhat the one team you left out. It feels like the one team that, for as big of a market as they're in, are not getting talked about whatsoever. And that's Boston. And look, I mean, certainly getting a renewal of the rivalry here. And I think it's interesting where you get the wild card series now that they've changed it to the home team hosting all 3, and the fact that we won't go back and forth at all between Yankee Stadium and Fenway. But you got to think with, look, I mean, the Yankees sort of found their second wind, right, the last couple weeks of the year. And it seems like this Yankees, it's sort of, as much as I'm talking Red Sox here, I think the handicap has to be, what are you getting out of New York in this best of 3? And that's the hardest thing to quantify, because every time we've watched the Yankees play stretches of good baseball, they seem to immediately get mired in slumps when at the worst times and the most probably publicly visible times, just because of how big of a team they are market-wide. And then when they tend to struggle, the Yankees, it seems like whenever people are ready to write them off, how many times have we heard people calling for Aaron Boone's firing throughout the year in the last few years? They get hot again and the bats wake up and they get enough out of the pitching to make it all work. That's where I look at that series kind of being the ultimate coin flip, where whoever comes out of Boston and New York, I will probably bet in the divisional series against the Blue Jays. And just naturally, because of what we're talking about, Greg, and the randomness with the Yankees and how untrustworthy they are, the market premium you're going to have to pay with them hosting in the wild card series. Red Sox, for as unflashy as they are relative to these other teams in the AL, that might actually be the play and not a bad bet to look at if you were going to take a long shot, either futures-wise on a pennant or look at a dog here in the wild card round.
Exactly. And man, that is going to be a lot of fun to take a look at the American League, because that's one where I would certainly advise a lot more game-to-game betting, because that's where the margins are just so thin. And we were talking about it. Typically, you like to be able to find some big giant plus prices. Not really getting that in terms of the American League pennant, because all those teams are very, very close to one another. And Ben, we are going to finally get the games getting going on Tuesday. We talked a little bit about Reds versus Dodgers, but anything else that you're looking at in terms of wild card games for Tuesday, whether that's something that you're going to bet or something that you just want to gauge perhaps going into game number 2 of these series?
I think for me, at least from the totals market, I'm fascinated by how this Tigers-Guardians series will play out. And we just had it. That felt like a playoff series in every regard, right? And you end up getting a two-team situation where they both tie in the regular season. It was all Guardians at the end. We're hearing the Tigers talk so publicly about how they're just pretending everything's starting over. Records are 0-0. Nothing that happens in August and September matters anymore. But on the Guardians' perspective, do you really trust the bats sustaining into a series against Detroit with how good the pitching has been? And on the flip side, do we really trust that Detroit can just kind of flip the switch, all of a sudden turn it on, and the offense will rise to the occasion? I find myself skeptical of both of those statements. So I get where the market's at, and making this a pick'em, saying, despite the great run from Cleveland, Detroit probably still the slightly better team, but because of the home field, you make it a pick'em. But these totals, I could see this being a series where all 3 games go under the total, and I'm fascinated to see how the books will handle that, where it's kind of all the series we have, Greg, feels like just the classic sort of stereotypical grinder where you're getting a lot of 2-1s, 3-2s type of series, with the way the best players, if you kind of break it down, right, like who are the best players on both teams? And I'd argue it's going to be the pitching that wins out in that. Also, and now I get we're kind of in this Indian summer right now. I don't think the weather's going to be as bad in some of these previous Cleveland area, Great Lakes sort of Octobers. But that's just one thing to keep in mind as well for some of these games once we get into the night sessions, depending on the timing. But that'll be the one where I'm kind of thinking unders are going to be the way to play that, whether it's full game as far as the totals are concerned, first 5, or player props as well.
Yep, and they're certainly going to not give you any sort of a inflated total in terms of Tigers versus Guardians. Right now, seeing a lot of 6s pop up. I personally took a 6.5 under when I saw that come up, because I knew that it wasn't going to be going any higher. I have a little bit of a tough time going under on 6, but if you can still grab a 6.5, which I'm finding as we are doing this podcast at still a few books, I certainly would be with you there. And Ben, I know you're doing an amazing job looking at baseball. You're doing a great job getting set for some football, and your play-by-play work is always second to none. So let the good people at home know it's all on tap for you, and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Hey, you got it. Ben_Wilson_1. I will be putting my fan hat on. I will be at American Family Field Monday night for game 2 of the NLDS, Greg. So that is what is on tap for me. All the other work stuff, I'm still working, but what really matters, it's your hometown team and a pennant chase. So that's really the main thing on the docket for me here.
Absolutely. Get yourself some spotted cows, get yourself some Leinenkugel summer shandy, and have yourself a good time, because it is going to be an absolutely amazing stretch run here for the Milwaukee Brewers. We'll see how far it goes, because myself and Ben are Wisconsin sports fans, and oftentimes these Wisconsin teams make the playoffs and then they don't necessarily make the run that we are hoping for, but hopefully this will be the year for that. And Ben, every single time he joins me, you don't have to hope for a good appearance. You know that you're going to get a good appearance. So big thanks to Ben for joining me on the Baseball Betting Show, now part of the VSIN Family Podcast. And coming up next, it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on all 4 games on the wild card board for this Tuesday as we touch them all.
If your small business is booming and ready to expand, you might say something like,
It's happening!
Booyah!
Crushed it.
but if you need someone who can actually help protect your growing business, just say,
Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
and just like that, your State Farm agent can help you get the coverage you need for your new space. For your small business insurance needs, like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Breaking down every game, every day in Major League Baseball. This is the Baseball Betting Show. Here is your host, Greg Peterson.
And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for the Baseball Betting Show with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSIN Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by Ben WIlson. He does such amazing work here at VSIN, taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of baseball. Does a lot of work with regards to our live betting shows. I know that he's hard at work with regards to just so much on the football front as well. His play-by-play work, second to none, and every single time he joins me, lends such great insight. So, big thanks to Ben for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this Baseball Tuesday as we touch them all.
If a game is listed on the betting board, Greg has a side and a total on it, so it is time to touch them all.
Do note that as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at gunit_D1. Very easy. We're going in time order with regards to these, so that's going to be able to keep things all in order. That's going to make sure that things are not convoluted. So how about if we do get started with that earliest game? It's 9:41, 9:42 on the card. Guardians play host to the Detroit Tigers. Tariq Skubal goes for the Tigres, and Gavin Williams goes for the Cleveland Guardians. This opened up at a 6.5, still seeing some 6.5s with the under at -120 and the over at even. Now we're starting to see some 6s, overs between -110 to a -120, unders between -120 and -110. Now I personally played the 6.5 under. I did set my total between a 6 to a 6.5 at a 6.2. If all you have is 6, I just can't go under on a 6. Like I said, I would rather take a 6.5 under rather than a 6 over. But if all you have is 6 by the time that this podcast comes out, that would be my buy point on the over. But I'm also in on the Cleveland Guardians. I was willing to take a plus 135 or higher on them. Tariq Skubal's obviously been amazing this year. Strikeout to walk ratio that is above a 7. We did see him hike the ball in his last start against the Cleveland Guardians. That was a little bit less than tremendous, but 2.21 ERA. He's got a sub 250 ERA on the road, and he is going up against Cleveland Guardians team that at home, they've only been able to average about 3.9 runs per contest. That's in the bottom 5 in all baseball. And you do have to be a little bit cautious. Like Gavin Williams, he has a 3.06 ERA. Fielding independence more than a full point and a half higher. He has been giving up this season about 1.4 to 1.5 home runs per 9 innings. What's really concerning is the fact that he does give up about 4.4 walks per 9 innings as well. But overall, has been able to do a really good job here in the second half of the season. You take a look at him post All-Star break, and he has just been going out there, and he has been firing all cylinders. At home, gives up closer to about 1.1 home runs per 9 innings. And last time that Gavin Williams gave up more than 3 runs in a start, you have to go all the way back to August 13th. So he's been able to keep this rolling for 7 straight starts, and he is backed up by a bullpen that does rank in the top 6 in the big leagues in terms of ERA. Hunter Gaddis and Cade Smith had their ups and downs this year, but these two guys come in firing all cylinders. They're still dealing with the injury to Nick Enright, but Eric Zabrowski has been able to give you a sub 3 ERA. Jacob Junis has been rock solid as well. And for the Guardians, the big thing is, are they going to be able to just develop a little bit of offense on Tariq Skubal? Because Jose Ramirez has been the heart and soul of this offense. 360 on base, 30 home runs. And then you do have Steven Kwan move the line, hitting about a 275. Kyle Manzardo doesn't hit for great average, but 27 home runs at 315 on base. But then you do have the guys at the bottom of the lineup. It's just a poo-poo platter of different guys that are hitting below 225. I will say George Valera actually got things going towards the back half of the season. Could be a valuable bat for this team, but I mean, that said, you've got the likes of a Daniel Schneemann, Bo Naylor, John Kenzie Noel, David Fry, so many guys that have been hitting for a 220 or lower this year, with Fry getting hit in the face by Tariq Skubal, ironically enough. And for the Guardians, the big key is getting Skubal up, because this is a Detroit Tigers bullpen that they do have some flaws with it. I'm looking at you, Tommy Kahnle, who has over a 4 ERA. They have been able to mix and match with Troy Melton being a nice long guy. He, Brendan Ennefe, Brant Herter, they've been able to give you a 3 ERA or better. So these guys have stepped up a little bit, and for the Tigers, overall this season, they've been a top 10 team with regards to run creation, but in the month of September, in the bottom 10, Riley Green, Spencer Torkelson, really good matchers, 36 home runs out of Green with a 260 average, Torkelson, 333 on base, 31 home runs, and Gary Carpenter, he has supplied the boom, he's been able to supply 26 home runs as well, and then you do have just really good balance, a lot of guys in that neighborhood of like a 252, 260, Green is one of those guys, Javi Baez, Gleyber Torres, Carpenter I mentioned before, you're able to throw in their Cole Keith as well, but I know that there have been a few injuries. Cole Keith has been dealing with a little bit of ailment as well, so that's something that you do want to take caution of, but I do think that with the way that the Guardians just roll into the postseason so strong, and them being at home, that this number has gone a little bit too lofty, plus 135 or higher. I'm looking at the Guardians on the money line. Like I said, I personally played a 6.5 under with regards to the total. I just can't advise it as a 6, so that's just a little bit too much to roll the dice. So if all you have is 6, I would be looking at that over to go along with the Guardians on the money line. 9:43, 9:44 on the card. It is the Cubs, they play host to the Slam Diego Padres. Nick Pivetta is on the bump for the Pods, and Matthew Boyd goes for the Cubs. The Cubs are a favorite of anywhere between -112 to a -120, between -105 to +103. That number on San Diego. Total on this game is 7, over and under both at -110, and I'm going to be looking at this total under. If you take a look at the Wrigley Field wind situation, it is going to be blowing inward at about 8 or so miles per hour. Now it's a little bit directional, so it's not like completely and utterly blowing in, but still, you've got a pair of offenses in the second half of the season have been up, down, all around, and for the San Diego Padres, to start with, they're in the bottom 7 in the big leagues in terms of home runs on a per-at-bat basis. I did semi-total at a 6.3, so here at a 7, I'm certainly going to be in on the under. Now, I recognize that Matthew Boyd has given up 4+ runs in 5 out of his last 7 starts, but he looked a little bit better in his last start of the regular season, gives up 2 runs against the New York Mets at home, and for Boyd, he's done a good job of not hurting himself. 1 home run, 2.1 walks allowed per 9 innings, 3.21 ERA, albeit strikeout stuff is way down, only about 7.7 strikeouts per 9 innings, and then on the flip side for Nick Pivetta, he has been a much better pitcher when he has been at home rather than away from home because he's a little bit of a fly ball pitcher. It's why he could never really get things off the ground when he was over in Boston. 2.36 home ERA, 3.55 ERA on the road this season, and on the road gives up about 1.45 home runs per 9 innings compared to about 0.8 home runs per 9 innings at home. Again, the wind situation at Wrigley Field should be able to help, and for Nick Pivetta, he is backed up by a bullpen that has been numero uno in all of baseball in terms of their bullpen ERA. Like, just so many guys have come out of this bullpen, have been rock solid for them. They pick up Mason Miller at the trade deadline. He, Ron Marinaccio, David Morgan, Adrian Morejon, Jason Adam, all these guys, a sub-3 ERA. Robert Suarez sometimes gets a little bit shaky in the back half of games, and he's supplying a 3 ERA as well for the Padres, though. It's just all about finding a little bit more run creation. Manny Machado, Fernando Tatis Jr. obviously do a nice job moving the line. Tatis, 25 home runs, 370 on base. Machado's hitting at 275 with 27 home runs. And then you've had Jake Cronenworth give you darn near a 370 on base. He's been solid. Ever since Ryan O'Hearn and Ramon Laureano have come over from the Orioles, they've been nice additions as well. Both of these guys providing above a 320 on base, and Laureano 20+ home runs overall this season. And for the Cubs, while this is a bottom 10 unit in terms of run creation since the All-Star break, you had Seiya Suzuki and Pete Crow Armstrong really find themselves in the final week of the regular season. Both were able to crank out multiple homers. Michael Busch comes in with a little bit of confidence as well. 343 on base with 34 home runs overall this season, but 3 home runs in his last 3 games played, so that's something that you'd like to see. They got a little bit of a spark from Moises Ballesteros ever since they called him up to the big leagues as they dealt with the injury to Miguel Amaya at the catcher spot, and Dansby Swanson, he's been a little bit up and down, but he's up to 24 home runs, and Nico Horner, since the All-Star break, he's been hitting above a 300, and this is a Cubs bullpen that, while they don't quite have the same ERA of the San Diego Padres, it is a very rock-solid bullpen. Now you've got Daniel Palencia off the injury list. He, Brad Keller, Drew Pomeranz, these guys have been able to give you a sub-3 ERA. Aaron Savali is a guy that's able to provide a little bit of long relief as needed as well. Andrew Kittredge has been solid in this bullpen, and I do think that with the wind blowing in, it's really going to help out Matthew Boyd and really both of these pitchers. Semi-total 6.3, like the under, and for the Cubs, made them a -128 favorite, so I like them on the money line. 945, 946 on the card. How about this rivalry? The Red Sox, say it third, they're facing off against the New York Yankees. And Max Fried is on the bump for the Yankees. Garrett Crochet goes for Boston. Boston is an underdog of anywhere between +112 to a +120, -130 to a -136. That number on New York. 7 is the total. Over is -110 to a -115. Under is -105 to a -110. Gonna be willing to go over here. I semi-total at 7.2. This despite the fact that Garrett Crochet, you want to talk about a guy who has been firing all cylinders on the road thus far this season. Mr. Garrett Crochet, it has been absolutely masterful what we've seen out of him thus far this season. As for Crochet, overall, he's going to be the runner-up for the American League Cy Young Award. 11.2 strikeouts to 2 walks per 9 innings, 259 ERA, but on the road, 0.7 home runs allowed per 9 innings. He is posting up a 2.25 ERA, and he's been able to do a rock-solid job when he's went up against the New York Yankees as well. A Yankees team that is averaging about 5.2 runs per contest. That is number 1 in the American League. They are far and away the number 1 team in the American League with regards to home runs on a per at-bat and a per-game basis, but he's went up against the New York Yankees 4 times this far this season. His strikeout-to-walk ratio in those starts is a 9.75. He's been able to post up about a 3.29 ERA, has given up 5 home runs in 27 and a third innings against the Yankees, so he does have the propensity to give up the deep ball, and that's just what's going to happen when you've got Aaron Judge providing 50-plus home runs, and it's able to give you an on-base percentage of about a 450. You've had over 34 home runs out of Trent Grisham this year with about a 350 on base. Cody Bellinger, it's a 270 with 29 home runs. You go down the list, but you do have Anthony Volpe, and you do have Austin Wells as well, a pair of guys with less than a 280 on base. They're able to give you some home run power, but I mean, it's been a case where it's been up, down, all around for them and for this New York Yankees team. The big concern is the bullpen, because you should be able to get a good start here out of Max Fried. He was struggling in like July into August, but that said, he's posting up overall for the season a 2.86 ERA, 8.5 strikeouts, fewer than 2.5 walks per 9 innings, giving up about 0.7 to 0.8 home runs per 9 innings. Obviously, has faced off against Boston a few times, and in those 3 starts against Boston, 18 and a third innings, did allow 2 home runs, but only 4 runs in total. So he's had some success there, and his ERA at home actually goes down to a 2.37 with 4 home runs allowed in 91 innings in Yankee Stadium. But I do think that the Red Sox are going to find a way to be able to move the line here. You've got Weiler Abreu and Trevor Story both hitting in that neighborhood about a 250 to 265 between the two of them, 47 home runs. Jaron Duran's been able to hit about a 255. Rami Gonzalez has been very underrated, hitting above a 300. You've been able to get some good production out of Masataka Yoshida recently over the last 30 or so days. He's been hitting for darn near a 300, so he's really been able to turn it on for the team as well. And for the Red Sox, again, that bullpen I think is really going to be proving to be big for them. Aroldis Chapman has been the best closer in all of baseball, right around a 125 ERA with darn near 13 strikeouts per 9 innings, but it's not just him. You've got the likes of Chris Murphy, Garrett Whitlock, Steven Matz, these guys who've been able to give you a sub-3.15 ERA. Greg Weissert has been solid in that bullpen as well. And ever since coming off the injury list, both Yuri De Los Santos along with Luke Weaver just have not looked like themselves. David Benhar has been a rock-solid pickup. Camilo Duvall's on. Devin Williams has been a complete and utter disaster for this team. So I do think that Crochet gives a little bit of better start than Fried, and I like the Red Sox bullpen a little bit more. I do think that the Yankees get a deep ball or two, even though it is getting a little bit colder out there in Yankee Stadium. Made my total 7.2, so I like the 7 over. And I do like the Red Sox on the money line, made them the minus 112 favorite, and wrap things up with 947, 948 on the card. The Reds hit the road. They're facing off against the LA Dodgers. Blake Snell goes for the Dodgers. Hunter Green is on the bump for the Reds. The Reds are a sizable underdog here, plus 164 to a plus 175, and between minus 188 to minus 210, that number on Los Angeles. 7 is the total. The over is minus 115, under is minus 105. I'm going to be looking at the under, and I set the Reds only at a plus 143. I think that the Reds have a legitimate shot of being able to seal this game because Hunter Green has been that good. Now, I will say for Hunter Green, even though he's got the 276 ERA, closer to 328 fielding dependent, the 1.3 home runs per 9 innings, a little bit of a concern, and for Hunter Green, he has had a few difficulties when he has been away from home thus far this season. You take a look at him on the road, the ERA does go up to a 481, small sample size of 8 starts, but 10 home runs allowed in 39 and a third inning, so you do need to take caution of that, and obviously this is an LA Dodgers team that they're right at the top of the big leagues in terms of run creation at home, and it's so big that they've got Max Muncy back. I know that he was dealing with a little bit of injury towards back half of that series against the Seattle Mariners, but you have to figure that he's going to be all good to go and all ready to return to the lineup for this wild card matchup. For Muncy, about a 375 on base, 19 home runs, and the run creation for the Dodgers actually jumps up by about a run and a half whenever Max Muncy's in there in the lineup, so that's actually something very important to take note of. But then you've got Andy Paz, Freddie Freeman, Teoscar Hernandez, all between 24 and 27 home runs. Freeman about a 367 on base. Hernandez only about like a 285 on base. Shohei Ohtani continues to do Shohei Ohtani things, 390 on base. He's been able to supply 55 home runs. Sung Kim has been solid in terms of moving the line, getting on base. But for the Dodgers, it has been a banged up bullpen, which Roki Sasaki coming into that bullpen, that could be a real game changer because the guys that were banged up and have come back, like you've got Blake Trinan, Kirby Yates, Tanner Scott, none of these guys have really been good this far this season. I'm pretty sure all these guys have an ERA above a 425. Like Justin Robelski as a long guy has honestly been better than their actual relievers. Anthony Banda's been decent. Alex Vesia, Jack Dreyer, all below 325 ERA. The actual relievers that they're supposed to be relying upon have not been great. And for the Cincinnati Reds, let's call it what it is. Everything about this team is relatively average other than some of the starting pitching because I just mentioned how good Hunter Green is. You've got the likes of Connor Phillips, Emilio Pagan, and Tony Santillan. These guys have been able to give you a sub 325 ERA in the bullpen, though Pagan, he does give up quite quite a few home runs. You always want to take caution of that. The long guys like Graham Ashcraft, Scott Barlow, they just have not been amazing for the team. And for the Cincinnati Reds, they're just sort of a do-your-job sort of lineup. You had nobody get above 22 home runs during the regular season. Ellie De La Cruz and Spencer Steer, 21 and 22 apiece. For De La Cruz, about a 335 on base. And you do have quite a few guys that are in that neighborhood of, we're going to call it about a 260 to 269, with Sal Stewart just below that at a 255. Gavin Lux, De La Cruz, Noelvi Marte, TJ Friedel, Austin the Says kid. They're all hovering right around there. Cabrian A, since they picked him up, has been able to give the team about a 315 on base as well. Miguel Andujar has been great. Limited sample size, but in 100 at-bats, he's given them about a 400 on base. But I think that Hunter Green legitimately gives his team a chance to be able to win the game, because with Blake Snell, even though he's given up 3 runs or fewer in all but one of his starts thus far this season with the Dodgers, we always know that he can be very wild and knock himself out of a start very early. 3.8 walks and a half strikeouts per 9 innings, 235 ERA, and has not given up too much of the deep ball. 0.4 home runs per 9 innings. I think that this is a well-pitched game, but I have a little bit more faith here in Hunter Green. Being able to get a plus 145 or higher on the Reds, and we are getting well above that. I'm going to take the Reds on the money line. Set by total 6.9, so I'm also in on the under, and that'll wrap things up for the Tuesday edition of the Baseball Betting Show, now part of the VSIN family podcast. A big thanks to Ben WIlson, who does great work here at VSIN. He joined me in the last segment. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Baseball Betting Show, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letters GM. Name does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. I'm going to be with you guys every single day throughout the postseason, so I'm back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.
Let's say your small business has a problem, like maybe one of your doggy daycare customers had an accident. You might say something like,
Doggone it!
Hi, Chihuahua.
Holy schnauzers.
but if you need someone who can actually help, just say,
Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
and get help filing a claim from your local State Farm agent. For your small business insurance needs, like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
At Capella University, we believe accessible education can make a difference in people's lives. That's why we offer scholarship opportunities to all eligible students. Whether you're considering a bachelor's, master's, or doctoral degree, our teams will walk you through the process and help you get the savings you're eligible for. Furthering your education is an investment in yourself. Entonces, ¿qué estás esperando? Un futuro diferente está más cerca de lo que crees con Capella University. Learn more at capella.edu.